Hey guys, how's it going? It's Danconia here. Welcome back to the Overwatch League Roundup. Stage 4, Week 4 results. So, it's been a crucial week in the Overwatch League as we approach the end of the season. And, to be quite honest, there have been some interesting results. One of them has really jeopardized one of our team's season. But we will start off in the order at which they were played, which means we start off with the Boston Uprising taking on the Florida Mayhem, and no surprises here that the Florida Mayhem have been on the up at the moment, and the Boston Uprising are certainly on a downwards trend. Florida Mayhem get the 4-0 over the Boston Uprising. Very good win for Florida, although there wasn't anything at stake for the Mayhem. This does end Boston's hopes of playoffs this season. They now have the rest of the season and the off-season to recuperate and sort some stuff out, because all is not happy at the Boston Uprising. You can make a lot of suggestions about what's wrong with Boston, but it's certainly gone downhill, especially in Stage 4, and it's cost them their play-ins. So that's all we can say about that. Moving on, we had the Dallas Fuel taking on the Hangzhou Spark. Hangzhou Spark could lock up a place in the top 6, I think, unless they already had it. I might be telling a lie, but hey. Hangzhou Spark taking on the Dallas Fuel. No surprises here that the Hangzhou Spark get the win over the Dallas Fuel. Dallas Fuel have really gone south this stage, I think we can all say that. 3-1 to the Spark. I mean, it's good that Dallas took a map, but that's the only positive I can take from that with the Dallas Fuel. They've shown glimpses of good play, but nowhere near what we need to see for Dallas to get play-ins, and this put their play-ins in very great jeopardy indeed. Hangzhou Spark though, looking good, and they seem to be bouncing back after a difficult start to the stage. Moving on, we had a really interesting game, and this was the Seoul Dynasty taking on the Shanghai Dragons. Shanghai. Now, they've looked odd this stage. We thought they might actually fare quite well in a DPS meta, but Stage 4 they've looked nowhere near as good as they were in Stage 3. Seoul Dynasty, a team with its ups and downs. I think we can all say that. Seoul have never been that consistent. But today they did get the 3-1 over the Shanghai Dragons, which really put them in a good position. It kept them in the hunt for the top 6 places, which would be a really good achievement for the Seoul Dynasty this season, considering they struggled last season, let's be honest. It's definitely been a better season for the Seoul Dynasty so far, and a 3-1 over the Shanghai Dragons has only improved their chances. Moving on after this though, we had the Washington Justice taking on the Atlanta Reign, 2 unbeaten teams at this point, or unbeaten in the stage, I should say. Washington Justice really, really looking good this stage. So have the Atlanta Reign, though. This was really close, but it ends 2-1 to the Atlanta Reign. They maintain that unbeaten record this stage. It's no hard on the. It's kind of hard on the Washington Justice. Atlanta have a lot to play for, though, and Washington, they couldn't quite match what Atlanta put out. It's no like disappointment for the Justice. It's been a really good stage for them. It's just unfortunate they couldn't get the 7-0 stage that they dreamt of. But Atlanta Reign are creeping up upon the top 6. Majorly. So keep an eye on them next week as well. Moving on, Chengdu Hunters taking on the San Francisco Shock. No surprises here that the Shock sweep the Chengdu Hunters aside 4-0. Shock looking as good as ever. And it's kind of what I expected from the Shock. They are so diverse that I think they're going to be pretty good in whatever meta you throw at them. They were very good in GOATs, and now they're looking very good in the 2-2 meta. So, Shock looking as dominant as ever. Chengdu Hunters, this put their play-in spot in jeopardy. So, oh boy, it's really getting close. Moving on, we had the Los Angeles Gladiators taking on the Hangzhou Spark. This was a grudge match. And both teams in the top 6. Gladiators were pretty much sealed in. I think Hangzhou were either sealed in or nearly sealed in at this point. Hangzhou Spark managed to get a 3-2 win over the Los Angeles Gladiators though. I didn't predict this. This caught me off guard. I thought the Gladiators were looking slightly better than the Hangzhou Spark in this 2-2 meta. It seems that it's taken time for Hangzhou to adjust. But now that they have adjusted, Hangzhou are starting to get back to the Hangzhou we've seen in previous stages, which is a great time to hit that sort of form going into the playoffs in a couple of weeks' time. So Hangzhou, one to watch out for. Moving on after this, we had the Paris Eternal taking on the Shanghai Dragons. Shanghai Dragons have had a torrid week. They lose 3-1 to the Paris Eternal. This kept Paris Eternal's hopes alive of play-ins. Very, very slim hopes, but hopes nonetheless. Shanghai Dragons? It's not the end of the world, but this is not the form you want to be going into the play-ins with. And it looks that's what they're going to be competing in now after these 2 losses to the Seoul Dynasty and the Paris Eternal. I don't think anyone really predicted Paris to beat Shanghai the way they did, but S3-1 for the Paris Eternal is really, really good. It's just a shame that Paris Eternal couldn't show a bit more consistency earlier in the season, especially during the GOATS meta. They would have been in a better place than they are now. Moving on after this, we had more implications for the Paris Eternal, but not involving them. It was the Los Angeles Valiant taking on the Boston Uprising. We've already talked about the Boston Uprising and how poor they've looked during this stage, and it's no surprises here that play-in hunting Valiant do get the win over the Boston Uprising 3-1. This puts to an end the hopes the Paris Eternal and everyone basically below Valiant of getting in the play-ins. So, unfortunate for Paris. Very unfortunate because they'd actually got the win they needed this week, but when you leave it so late, it is in other people's hands, and the Valiant don't look like dropping a game against the Boston Uprising, let's be honest. So a good win for the Valiant, and they are right on the tails of the Chengdu Hunters. Moving on, we had the Seoul Dynasty taking on the Philadelphia Fusion. This was a must-win for the Seoul Dynasty if they wanted a chance of top 6. It didn't mean much for the Philadelphia Fusion. They'd already dropped too many games during this season to be in the hunt for those top 6 places. So, Seoul Dynasty. They can beat Shanghai Dragons, but they can't beat the Philadelphia Fusion. Philadelphia Fusion take the win 3-1, and it's again showing the inconsistency of this Seoul Dynasty squad. It means that they cannot get top 6. They are now out of that running. There is only one team left in the running for top 6, and that is Atlanta Reign that are not already in it. So, it makes next week very much clear-cut, but for Seoul Dynasty, I think this is an opportunity missed, and the play-ins are going to be tough. There are some teams really coming up on the coattails of some of the top teams now that haven't looked good earlier in the season, but are looking good now and could cause some major upsets in those play-ins. And remember, there's no second chances. Once you get to the playoffs, it's a double elimination bracket, and there will be a second chance. But in the play-ins, no second chances. You lose, you go home. So, Seoul Dynasty need to make sure that they find some consistency. Moving on, Chengdu Hunters taking on the Houston Outlaws. Must win for Chengdu Hunters, and really, they needed to win comprehensively, and they don't. It's a 3-2 to the Chengdu Hunters over the Houston Outlaws, but it's not the win they were looking for. They really kind of needed a 4-0 here. It's not in their hands anymore. It's very much in the Los Angeles Valiant's hands for next week's homestand. They have not got easy fixtures, Valiant, but it is extremely doable, especially when, at your homestand you've got your crowd behind your backs anyway. So, it's not over for Chengdu. They still occupy the 12th place, but Valiant have the opportunity to take that away from them when Chengdu can't do nothing about it. So, that's going to be interesting next week. This is where things get interesting. This was a straight battle for top 6. London Spitfire versus the Atlanta Reign. London Spitfire were the only team at this point not sealed a top 6 spot out of the teams that are already in there. Hangzhou and Los Angeles Gladiators were already sealed in, along with the top 3. Atlanta Reign are the only team that could dislodge the London Spitfire. Atlanta Reign have got quite a few games to play at this point. This was their 3rd to last game of the season. They will play 2 games next week. But this was their most difficult game against the London Spitfire, who obviously want a top 6 space. But this goes horribly wrong for the reigning champions. They get swept comprehensively 4-0 by the Atlanta Reign. I was astonished about what I saw from London Spitfire. There is going to be a completely separate video on London Spitfire and the troubles they have seen at times during this season. This was not champion material at all. And this now takes everything out of London's hands. This was London's last game of the season. They cannot impact the table next week. They have played 28 games. They still occupy 6th place. Atlanta Reign play 2 games next week. If they win those 2 games, they will take 6th spot from the London Spitfire, and London Spitfire will have to play in the play-ins. If Atlanta drop a game next week, then London Spitfire will finish 6th and have that top 6 spot, and Atlanta Reign will have to play in the play-ins. The problem is, Atlanta Reign have to play the Boston Uprising and the Dallas Fuel next week. It's not exactly a difficult fixture schedule. We now expect Atlanta Reign to finish 6th, and the London Spitfire will have to play in that single elimination bracket in the play-ins against the likes of Seoul Dynasty, Shanghai, Guangzhou. It's doable for London, but I worry about their inconsistencies and being able to clutch in the overtime situations. It's cost them dearly this season. Work to do for the champions. Then we had some quaint games, because they didn't really mean anything. Paris Eternal taking on the Washington Justice. Paris and Washington both out of the running, but Washington Justice looking to finish 6-1 this stage. And they get the win over the Paris Eternal 3-1. Paris, they gave an account of themselves, but Washington are just too good right now. And I never thought I'd find myself saying that, which is quite interesting if you ask me. And then we had the Florida Mayhem taking on the Toronto Defiant, the grudge match between Logix and Sire Player. The Logix, who used to play for the Florida Mayhem, and Sire Player, who ultimately dislodged him from the team. 4-0 for the Florida Mayhem. I'm not surprised. A week where Florida Mayhem went 8-0, which I actually think I predicted in the preview video. Extraordinary what Florida have done in this stage, and, you know, for Washington and Florida, our bottom 2 teams at this point, it's actually looking bright for next season. I just hope they can stick to what they've been doing, because I don't want to see teams get trounced like Florida have and Washington have earlier in this season. Toronto, work to do, but you've got an off-season now to sort it out. And then the last game of the week 4 was the Dallas Fuel taking on the Guangzhou Charge. Dallas Fuel couldn't get into the play-ins. Guangzhou Charge are definitely in the play-ins. It was just about seeding. No surprises here that the Guangzhou Charge get the 4-0 win over the Dallas Fuel, despite some quite major technical difficulties on the sides of the Dallas Fuel, I believe, for Unco. But eventually they do get there. 4-0 for the Guangzhou Charge, rounding off a very good Stage 4, because I don't believe Guangzhou play next week. So, let's look at our standings. Top, Vancouver Titans, as ever. San Francisco leapfrog. New York Excelsior into 2nd, though. New York are now down to 3rd. Hangzhou Spark in 4th, and Los Angeles Gladiators in 5th. That top 5 are sealed in the top 6 now. There is a tussle in 6th and 7th between the London Spitfire and the Atlanta Reign. You can see the Atlanta Reign have got 2 more games to play this season, whereas London don't have any, and the map differential is not in London's favour. As I said, if Atlanta can get 2 wins on the board next week, they will overtake the Spitfire and dump them out of the top 6. In 8th we've got Seoul, 9th we've got Guangzhou, looking very good. Philadelphia in 10th, Shanghai slipping all the way down to 11th, but it doesn't really mean much right now because they can't fall out of the top 12. Chengdu Hunters occupy the last top 12 spot, but they are being hunted by the Los Angeles Valiant, who can take that spot providing they get a win next week because of the map differential. Then we have the Paris Eternal in 14th, Dallas Fuel in 15th, Houston Outlaws in 16th. Their season has ended. Boston Uprising with 2 more games to play in 17th. Joint 18th, we have the Toronto Defiant and the Washington Justice. Those seasons have also ended, along with our bottom place team, Florida Mayhem, who will finish bottom, because they have also played 28 games now. So, the teams that will be in action next week will be Vancouver, San Francisco, New York, Hangzhou, Los Angeles Gladiators, the Atlanta Reign, the Shanghai Dragons, the Los Angeles Valiant, and the Dallas Fuel, and the Boston Uprising. Those are the teams we are going to see in the LA Valiant homestand, the Kit Kat Rivalry weekend next week. And there is a few loose ends to tie up in terms of playoffs and play-ins. 4 teams have got a lot to play. Well, I say 4 teams. Basically 2 teams have got a lot to play for, but it impacts 4 teams. And then we will see where we go from there, and we will evaluate our end of season standings. We will look at the entire stage standings next week as well, as I'm sure some people are interested. It looks very different from the rest of the season, but it doesn't make any difference because there are no stage playoffs. Okay, that was a lot of talking. That was actually a lot of talking. It's been a week. It has certainly been a week. London capitulating like they did is astonishing to me. I thought that was going to be a really close game. Maybe London wouldn't have won it, but I thought it would be close, but it wasn't. It was nowhere near close, but there is a whole video coming up on that. It is already recorded. I recorded it after the game. Discussing what is going on at the Spitfire, because this is certainly not the Spitfire we saw last year at this time. It's not brilliant. Not brilliant. Let's go with that. But I am going to leave it here for this one. The next video will be about the London Spitfire, no less. There is quite a bit of content coming up on the channel anyway, and then we'll have preview for our last week of the regular season, the Kit Kat Rivalry weekend, and then we'll have the results for that, and a load of other content leading into the play-ins, the playoffs, the grand finals, and then after that, the Overwatch World Cup, which should be interesting. But for now, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a like, subscribe if you're new, and I will see you in the next video. See you then.